Most people will hear that Donald Trump may go to Islamabad if an Iran deal is signed and think it is just another theatrical Trump line. It may be theatrical, but it is also something more important. It suggests the ending of this war may no longer be treated as a quiet back-channel achievement. It may be turning into a political event that someone wants to own, and that changes the diplomacy. Let me start with one fact that changes everything. Reuters reported that Trump said he might go to Islamabad if a deal with Iran is reached and signed there. In the same remarks, he said Iran had agreed to almost everything and suggested a ceasefire extension might not even be necessary, though he did not provide evidence for some of his claims. At the same time, Reuters also reported that Pakistan said no date had yet been set for a second round of talks, while Turkey said it remained in close contact with the United States, Iran, and mediator Pakistan, and that ministers from Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt would meet in Antalya. Put those pieces together, and the shape of the story changes. This is not just a negotiation. It is a staging battle. Most people think the only question is whether the next U.S. Iran meeting happens. That is not the deepest question. The deeper question is who gets to stand at the table if the war ends, where that ending happens, and who gets political ownership of it. I would call this endgame ownership. Endgame ownership happens when a conflict moves close enough to a possible settlement that the diplomacy stops being only about the terms and starts being about the signature moment itself. At that point, place matters. Timing matters. Who appears in the room matters. Who gets photographed matters, because the ending of the war becomes a political asset. That is what may now be starting to happen around Islamabad. Think about how different those two signals are. On one side, Trump says he may go if the deal is signed there and talks as if the breakthrough is close. On the other side, Pakistan says no date is set. Those are not random contradictions. They suggest the diplomacy is alive, but the choreography is not settled. And that matters. Because once public leaders begin talking about the ending before the structure is actually finished, the incentives inside the negotiation change. Pressure rises to produce something signable. The room becomes more political, the intermediary becomes more important, and the risk grows that optics begin to run ahead of substance. That is why Islamabad matters so much. It is no longer just a neutral venue. It is becoming a possible stage. And a stage creates a different kind of diplomacy. A quiet technical negotiation is about text, sequencing, verification, and trade-offs. A staged ending is about narrative, symbolism, credit, and the image of who ended the war. Those are not the same things. And when they overlap, the chances of misunderstanding rise. Look at the broader regional picture. Reuters reported that Turkey remains in close touch with Washington, Tehran, and mediator Pakistan. It also said ministers from Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt would meet in Antalya. That means the diplomatic corridor around the U.S. Iran conflict is widening. The ending of the war, if it comes, will not look like a purely bilateral Washington Tehran event. It will look more regional, more mediated, and more politically staged than that. That is the deeper shift. The war began as a brutal military confrontation. Its possible ending may be routed through a regional diplomatic theater in which Pakistan hosts, Turkey coordinates, Gulf actors hover nearby, and Trump openly signals he may personally arrive to claim the moment if the deal is ready. That is not normal endgame diplomacy. That is personalized endgame diplomacy. And personalization changes everything, because once the ending becomes something a leader may want to physically appear for, the pressure to deliver a symbolic package can rise faster than the pressure to resolve the hardest unresolved questions inside it. That should make people cautious. Not because the talks are fake, but because the politics around the talks may now be getting bigger than the paperwork itself. There is another layer here. Trump's willingness to mention Islamabad. So publicly raises Pakistan's significance even further. Pakistan is no longer only a channel. It becomes the possible place where the signature happens, the cameras turn on, and the ending gets branded. That gives Islamabad more relevance, more visibility, and potentially more leverage at exactly the moment the diplomacy is most delicate. This is why the story is bigger than whether the next meeting is scheduled. The schedule matters. But the structure around the schedule matters more. If the war's end is now being built around a possible public signing scene, then every delay becomes more politically visible, every disagreement becomes harder to manage quietly, and every breakthrough becomes more valuable as a piece of personal or national credit that can help force momentum. It can also create the temptation to oversell what is actually agreed. So what should you watch next? Watch whether Washington keeps talking publicly as if a breakthrough is near even before dates are fixed. Watch whether Pakistan moves from host to visible co-owner of the diplomatic moment. Watch whether Antalya and related regional meetings produce a more coordinated corridor around the talks. And watch whether the next stage of diplomacy looks more like technical bargaining or more like preparation for a signature event. Because the real story is not just that Trump may go to Islamabad. The real story is that the end of this war may already be turning into something people want to own, stage, and personally seal. And once the ending becomes a prize, diplomacy changes. It stops being only about what the deal says. It also becomes about who gets to end the war in public.